Welcome to the History AI podcast, where the past comes alive with facts, anecdotes, and a dash of humor. Here are your hosts, Chuck and Marco.
Welcome to the History AI podcast. I'm Chuck.
And I'm Marco. Today, we're flapping our wings into a lesser-known yet plucky chapter of Texas's past, the Chicken War.
Oh, the Chicken War, where Franco-Spanish relations in East Texas got a little, well, scrambled. But before we dive into this coup of conflict, let's briefly acknowledge our sponsors.
Wave goodbye to sugar-loaded boosts and say hello to Strikeforce Energy. The energy drink additive revolutionizing how you power up, all without a single calorie or sugar. Just a squeeze, and you're set for action. Ready to make the switch? Visit strikeforceenergy.com. And for our listeners, spark your savings with an exclusive 20% discount. Just use code UTSALAX24 at checkout. Remember, UTSALAX24. Strikeforce Energy, elevate every sip.
Before the feathers flew in the Chicken War, there was a long-standing yoke of tension between French and Spanish settlers stemming from territorial claims in East Texas, traced back to the ill-fated establishment of Fort St. Louis by La Salle, and the subsequent Spanish presidios. The henhouse of diplomacy was on shaky ground to say the least.
Absolutely, Marco. And then comes the fateful year of 1719, when a modest French contingent led by a diplomat made its way into Spanish territory, stirring the nest and sending shivers down the spines of the Spanish settlers at the mission.
The nervous Spanish commandant, fearing the worst, abandoned the mission in haste, leaving behind, you guessed it, their chickens, which, as you can imagine, gave this conflict its whimsical name. But it wasn't just the chickens that got left behind. The French, who were more amused than threatening, looted the mission and captured a lone Spanish soldier in the process.
Talk about being a lone rooster in the henhouse. Now, here's where the tale gets a peck more interesting. Amidst the ensuing chaos, the captive Spanish soldier saw an opportunity when a mischievous chicken in the courtyard stirred a ruckus, startling the French leader's horse and causing him to be thrown off.
That fall from grace, or rather horse, provided the perfect distraction for our Spanish soldier to flutter out of captivity and flee the coop, so to speak.
Now let's talk about the aftermath that was not as light as a feather for the Spanish authorities. The Spanish viceroy back home was utterly embarrassed by the way the mission's commandant and troops had flown the coop at the first sign of trouble. This unexpected French invasion and the subsequent flight were seen as a cock-up, spotlighting the fragile hold the Spanish had over East Texas.
The Chicken War was a wake-up Cluck, leading to a reinforced Spanish military presence and better fortified missions in East Texas. Despite the humor we find in hindsight, this foul skirmish marked a serious re-evaluation of Spanish colonial strategies in the region.
As amusing as it sounds, the Chicken War was no poultry matter, but a dramatic episode within the greater struggle between France and Spain over the lush wild territories of East Texas.
It laid bare the fragility and the stakes of colonial endeavors in the New World. And while it's just a peck in the grand scheme of Franco-Spanish rivalry, its reverberations echoed through the annals of Texas history.
So, next time you hear the cluck of a chicken, remember, each cluck carries with it the echoes of a bygone era where feathers were ruffled in the fight for the Lone Star State.
And with that, we end today's episode. It's been an exciting exploration into the henhouse of history with you, Chuck.
Likewise, Marco. But before we sign off, we'd like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to all our listeners. Your support makes every episode of the History AI podcast possible.
Absolutely. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, rate, and share our podcast. It helps other history enthusiasts find us and join our growing community.
And feel free to crack open the discussion by leaving us a review on your preferred podcast platform or send us a message on social media. We appreciate your feedback and are always eager to hear your thoughts.
Until next time, keep pecking at the endless feed of history, and remember, every cluck has a tale.